Hello everyone, my name is Dylan, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down exactly what you need to know, every single thing about the 2025 SAT papers, starting with the question, which is really important: when are the tests? Now, this information is released well in advance, and I can break it down for you day by day. The first day of the 2025 SATs will be Monday, the 12th of May, and on that day, two papers will be sat, paper 1 and paper 2 for English grammar, punctuation, and spelling. After that, on the Tuesday, the 13th of May, we have the English reading paper being sat. Then on Wednesday, the 14th of May, we have mathematics papers 1, which is arithmetic, and 2, which is your first reasoning paper, followed by on the Thursday, the final day of tests, where we have just one paper, which is paper 3 of maths, another reasoning. So if we break this down, we will have two papers to sit on the Monday, both of them spelling, punctuation, and grammar. We have one paper on the Tuesday, which is the English reading. We have two more papers on the Wednesday, arithmetic and reasoning 1. And then we have one final paper on the Thursday, which is reasoning 2. 3 maths papers, 3 English papers. So I think what we should do now is dive exactly into what is actually included in these tests, including the timer and how many questions we're supposed to get through and the types of questions that might come up. So starting on Monday, the first paper we will sit on Monday is the English grammar, punctuation, and spelling paper 1, which is just labeled questions. And in this booklet, you'll have 50 questions to answer, and you will get 45 minutes to do so. So we're running at just below a minute per question, but some questions we can answer honestly in 10 seconds. Others might take a little bit longer. So let's, with a bit more detail, dive into what the questions might look like. The GPS test paper 1 is famous for having lots of different question types in it. Just take a look at what's on the screen right now as an example of some previous questions. We have some blanks we've got to fill in here by changing some of these root words using prefixes or suffixes or anything like that. We have some tick box tables to complete. We're asked to circle some different types of words and also to tick boxes. So it's really important in this paper 1 that we are reading the question carefully as to what it wants us to do and able to get the actual mark. Even if we understand what's going on, we need to read the question carefully. And one other thing I will say about paper 1 for grammar, punctuation, and spelling is that spelling is a hidden part of this. If you spell a word incorrectly, you will not get the mark. For example, down here, complete each sentence with a word from the same word family as proud. We represented our school in the competition. Now, you might well know that the answer here would be proudly. We proudly represented. But if you write in proudly and forget the U, for example, that says prodly. Even though you've done the correct suffix at the end, you won't get a mark because you haven't spelt the entire word correctly. So just be aware of spelling as well. On the same day after that paper 1, you will complete paper 2 on Monday, the 12th of May. Now, this is a straight up spelling test. You will receive 20 words to write down and spell correctly. And this test is not strictly timed. Okay, it doesn't come with a timer that says we need to answer all these questions in this time, because you'll have an adult at the front of the room who's reading out the script and telling you the words as you go. So there's no strict timer, but it usually takes around 15 minutes. And here's what it looks like. You will be given some sentences with gaps in them. And then the script, which obviously you won't see because this tells you how to spell the words, read out by an adult at the front, will give you firstly the word is lamb. Then it will put the word into a context of a sentence. There was a lamb in the field. And then finally, the adult will repeat the word one last time. So each time you have a word to write down, you technically hear it 3 times. Once it's just read to you. Second time it's in a sentence. Third, it's read to you again. And now every time we go through them, we'll go through it 20 times, and you will have figured out and hopefully written down 20 different words, and you'll be marked on that to see how your spelling was. Next day on the Tuesday, 13th of May, you'll have your reading comprehension paper. You'll notice this has changed from orange to yellow at the top. Doesn't mean anything other than just signifying that this is a reading comprehension paper. And this is where we get roughly 38 questions and 60 minutes to answer them. You might be thinking, oh, that's a nicer timer. Only 38 questions in 60 minutes. Well, look, this includes reading time for the texts. There's a lot of time, a big chunk of your time in this test will be taken up by simply reading the reading comprehension text themselves. And we can see here, look, I've taken this again from last year, and this happens every year in the reading comprehension. There are 3 texts to get through. Here we have Streaky and Squeaky, the girl who walked on air, and then finally, the leopard. So 3 texts to get through. And you can see again in the comprehension booklet where we put our answers, sometimes we're asked to write things down and we have bullet points, we're asked to do 2 things. Sometimes we join up and match up answers by drawing lines. A lot of the time we have to do some ticking. Tick 1, really important to read. This is a reading comprehension test, by the way. We can't get any adults to read this to us. It's testing our reading. And then over here, look at this. You may never have seen a question type look like this before with this table, a message, evidence. What I'm saying is part of the comprehension process is reading and understanding what the question actually wants you to do. So that's not to be underestimated. And that's why looking at previous papers is very much useful, so you're not caught out by a question type you've never ever seen before. So just know this, in this test, you have 3 texts to get through. Out of the roughly 38 questions, it'll be broken up. You might get 10 questions for the first text, 14 questions for the next text, 14 questions for the last one. It's often split up differently. So it's just worth looking when you have to move on to your next text to answer the next chunk of questions. Just be aware of that. Then on Wednesday, the 14th of May, we have 2 papers to complete. And the first one is paper 1 for maths, which is arithmetic. Straightforward, this one, 36 questions to answer in 30 minutes. So we have to move quite quickly. But luckily for us, take a look. It's questions like this, which is just straight up maths. There's no reasoning involved. There's no reading of questions to figure out what to do. You're just asked to do some questions. And they range in difficulty. 707 take away 10. This might take you 3 seconds to answer. Whereas over here, long division, this is going to take you much longer. So the power in this test is that if you're quick with your mental arithmetic and you can get those questions done, like question 1 very quickly, you're going to free up some more time later on to get some more marks on the trickier questions that just take a little bit longer. Again, it's worth looking at the question types, looking at previous papers. We've got loads on our YouTube channel. Go and find them because you will see questions and how they're written. For example, here, 1 takeaway blank. Just putting that blank in a different space. It's important that we see that and practice that beforehand. On the same day, that Wednesday, we go into paper 2, which is the first reasoning paper. Roughly 25 questions. Again, we're saying roughly. Comprehension is usually 38, like I said, but don't be surprised if one year they do 39 or 36 or 37. It might change. We see this change all the time in maths. It's a roughly 25 questions on paper 2. Sometimes it's been more than that. Sometimes it hasn't been quite 25, but you do get 40 minutes to answer it. So we can see we're getting more time to answer these questions. And there is a reason for that because these are much more reasoning based. The clue is in the name, the reasoning paper. You might have lots more to read through, to understand, to figure out. But just know this, guys, this is not a comprehension test. You can get someone to read these questions to you because we are not testing your comprehension. We're testing your maths. And you can see here, look, we get that bubble, that thought bubble type question. Done a whole video on that. Go and watch it on our channel. And we have to explain something. That's pure reasoning there. We might have to measure using some equipment. So you have access to a protractor. I've done a whole video on measuring accurately, rulers and protractors. We've got loads on our channel. Up here, you might have to order something in boxes, and then look, we even get graphs and translations and shapes and things like that. So just something to be aware of. Then the final day, once you've made it there, you're thinking, gosh, I've gone through so much. Last day, just 1 paper to do. It's the final maths paper, and it's another reasoning. We tend to see paper 3 has fewer questions than paper 2. Now it might simply mean that paper 3 has more 2 or 3 mark questions. So even though there are fewer questions to get through, some of the questions might be trickier and take up more time. And again, we see a whole range of questioning here. We often see some of the trickiest questions in paper 3, but again, there have been years where paper 2 was harder. So it's not a straightforward rule. But what I can see here is there's a lot more information to digest. There's some different types of shape that I might not have seen before, or representations, lots of graphs. And look at this. When we see a box this big that says show your method, this is a 3-marker question. So we know we've got lots of steps to get to the right answer there. Just something to be aware of. Knowing when the SATs are and when the papers are and what's going to be in them is half the battle. But there's more. Once you've done that, what are the grade boundaries? How do I know how I did in this test? Well, you may well be aware of the different types of levels we have, and I'll talk about them in a second. But the first thing to note is this. Marks are shown in a scaled score. So for example, this test, whatever mark we get out of whatever there is in total that we've got to work from, it is then given as a scaled score. And 80 is the lowest anyone can get. all the way up to the highest being 120, which means the average score, bang in the middle, is 100. So whatever the average score is, even if it's 58 or 72, whatever it might be, whatever the average score is, boom, in the middle is going to be labeled as 100. And that's important because to be working towards, which isn't quite reaching that level of where we want to be in Key Stage 2, that's going to be any score from 80 up to 100. That's going to be working towards. The expected standard is 100 and above. So 100 becomes the pass mark. That average score is 100. We want to reach that to be what we call expected standard. And there is another chunk on the top that we might be pushing for, which is greater depth standard, which is over 110. So anyone over 100, cool, you've got it. If you're over 110, you've pushed into that top category of greater depth. So these are the three things we've probably heard of in school a lot: working towards expected and greater depth standard. Those are the boundaries you want to meet. You might be thinking, well, what do I exactly need to get then? If it's just 100, is that just made up? It changes every year. Depends on the paper itself. So if it's a trickier paper, you might need fewer marks to get to that 100 expected score because it was harder. We can't tell you that. We don't know that yet. Okay, it's not information we ever have ahead of the SATs. All we know is that we're going to try our hardest when it comes to doing the papers. And when will I know my results? This is a question we get a lot of the time. When will I know my results? I'm going to sit these papers. How long does it take to get back to me? Well, we've already gone through the dates of when the actual papers are, and that's early-ish May. So this is a process that does take time. It's marked by teachers who apply to be SATs markers, okay? So teachers will say, I want to do some SATs marking, please. They'll apply to do it. They might be chosen, given some training, and then paid for their time to mark the tests. Schools will be able to access the scores online from this date. Ready? Tuesday, the 8th of July. Okay? So it's a little bit of a wait, isn't it? From when we actually managed to get our results, from when we actually sat the test itself. But this is when our schools are able to access. What you'll notice is schools might decide to do this differently. They might decide how to issue these results to pupils, to parents. They might tell the pupils straight away. They might put it into a letter and the letter goes home so the parents can read it with their child. It's different school to school. So what I would say is check with your school what their process is and what they're going to do so you're not caught out or shocked or anything like that. But realistically, what will happen is by the end of the summer term, by the end of the school year, of course, you will be given your results. It might be that they're put into the end of year reports. It might just be stapled onto them and given out like that. Listen, this is where I can't tell you what every school in the country does. It's down to the school. And there's one last thing to think about. How can I prep? Well, guys, look, you might recognize this guy all around the screen here. It's me. We have so many videos on our channel now. So looking forward to the 2025 SATs. We've got lots of information from this video, I hope. How can I prep even further? Well, look, there's so much content on our channel. Just go and take a look at them. These are some of our most popular videos. Why not check them out? They might be really helpful. Guys, hope you found this useful. I'll see you next time.